listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft, the people who play it. Today is July 18th, 2023, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I am joined today, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, it's another Tuesday. We're recording on a Tuesday. How you doing?
This is like 3 in a row. It's Tuesdays in July. We're 3 for 3 so far, so I'm doing great. It's an exciting reset day after patch week. I played a lot of WoW this past week, so we got a lot to talk about. It's cool. It's a pretty there's a lot of stuff happening in this patch. The weird thing, I guess, is that there's like no shortcut on ramp to gear, really. Like there's some catch up gear, but you got to work to get it for sure. So, but there's a lot of cool stuff to do, and I've been having a really good time. So I'm excited, and it's always fun to talk about WoW like on reset day. You know, when stuff is. We're kind of recapping, looking ahead. It's like the perfect way to kick off the week.
It is. This is what we ideally were doing for so long before our work schedules just completely jacked us up entirely. And I have no idea if we're going to land on a Tuesday next week, but this week it worked out again. So here we are. And yes, you're right that, man, oh man, this past week has been busy World of Warcraft. This, as I said on the last show, is definitely the largest .5 content update we've ever received. I think, with the amount of stuff they added in just for players to do and experience and enjoy. And it just keeps getting bigger because we're going to talk about some secret stuff that's also been popping up in the Secrets Discord, the Warcraft Secrets Discord, that Jason's been progressing towards a little bit. But before we dive into what we did this past week in World of Warcraft and whatnot, there's just a little update about the ABK stuff, because today is, the closing day, right? This is the
contractually agreed upon date that they were going to close by when they signed this deal in, what was that, January of 22, December of 21, whatever it was.
Yeah.
So at press time, we don't really have a lot of details. I can tell you that somewhat surprisingly, the FTC did appeal last week's ruling for the stay, but their appeal was also denied. So so the roadblocks in the U.S. were cleared, at least for now. I mean, I believe there's still like pending antitrust legislation in the U.S., but I don't think that that's on track to potentially interrupt the transaction.
Yeah.
The deal's still not approved by the UK's CMA, so they're reportedly looking at potential workarounds to either appease the CMA or find some other way to operate in the UK. And you're hearing some reports that they may seek a contract extension. If the contract expires, apparently it doesn't really mean that the merger or the acquisition is off necessarily, but I think it does entitle Activision Blizzard to a hefty payout for Microsoft to the tune of like $3 billion or $2 billion or something. Like several $1 billion are on the line if Microsoft doesn't close this deal by the end of today, I think.
That's what it reads as. Yeah, that's what we've been reading.
Right. So, I mean, a contract extension could be, could be sort of a vehicle to make sure that they have everything tidied up with the UK market before they proceed. Or who knows? Maybe Microsoft looks at it and goes, you know what? We'll take our chances. We'll figure something out in the UK. We'll license through a third party, or we'll do some other kind of remediation. But it's not worth paying an extra $3 billion for this and then waiting to start making money off of it. I don't know. So
$3 billion.
We'll keep an eye on it. $3
billion should be a lot of lobbying power for the UK. So I imagine they could probably find a way to spend less money and figure something out than the $3 billion. Yeah,
right. You would think so. At the moment we don't know what's going to happen, but just to circle back on that. I mean, last week we had some huge news about it, obviously, because the ruling in the FTC's case came down. The injunction they were looking for to prevent the transaction from happening outside of their timeline, and then the judge ruling in favor of Microsoft, and then the appeal came down. We didn't know if it would or not. I didn't think that it would based on recent history, but it did, and that didn't work. So I don't know. The saga continues. Hopefully we'll be at the end of it sooner than later. We're getting pretty close. There's not a lot of dominoes left here. There's like one, maybe two dominoes left. So maybe next week we'll have something more definitive, but yeah, this week is going to be interesting with Microsoft, Activision, Blizzard news.
Yeah, it certainly is. But before, I guess after diving into that, we can dive into what happened this past week before we dive into what's going on this current week. Did you get up to your usual raiding behavior, Jason?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, sort of. Although we ended up only raiding 2 nights, but we did a lot of raid. The nice thing about Aberrus is it's a fast run. It's a fast clear. So even in 2 nights, we ended up heroic full clear. We've been doing the normal unlock still because Sark just has some really good stuff, like the cloak and the beacon trinket. They're very good items. So even at lower item level, and then Sark drops them at higher item level, even on normal. Like if you get the cloak, I think you can upgrade it to heroic equivalent. So it's kind of worth doing, which is cool. It's always fun to kill bosses and get loot that people are interested in. So we've been doing that. We did. We recleared Mythic Kazara last week, which was good. We've had some heartbreakers on that boss, so getting a couple kills in, it feels good. And we had a decent amount of time to look at Mythic Assault of the Zakali. We didn't get it, but we got closer than we have, so we're making some progress. One thing about Raid last week is it was, patch week, the season kind of midpoint or 1/3 of the waypoint or whatever, and they've adjusted the rate at which set tokens drop. And it's noticeable. We got like 1 token from set token bosses, and we got other different kinds of loot, which is cool because there's plenty of good loot in Aberrus that people want, and tokens for a group that's been clearing most of the raid for 2 months already. The tokens with the catalyst being open and everything, they just really lose value quickly. So that was a cool change. I'm glad they did that. This was a huge week for me with Mythic Plus. I did so many keystones. People were around. They wanted to play. I was kind of motivated to play. It wasn't a great week overall with the combo, but it wasn't a bad week, certainly. It was a pretty good week overall. So I was doing keys after raid. I was doing keys on off nights. I did some keys like Saturday afternoon. I had some free time. I ended up getting over 2660 rating, and I unlocked the 7 teleports I was missing. So I am done with plus 20s. I went from 0 to 100% in 2 resets, which was great. I had a nice crew of guildies and stuff to play with, and we did great. A bunch of people got portals unlocked this week. Maybe not all 8 or all they were missing, but a bunch of people got progress on that. And the keystone luck was just ridiculous. Like we just kept rolling the next key that I needed on the list or the next key somebody else needed over here or whatever, which was really nice because that can be frustrating, when you're hunting for that. Oh, I just need that one key to roll this week so I can get this done. They just kept coming. So that was really fun, and it feels great to be done with that for now because with the patch changes to the myth track gear, all I really have to do now is like 16s, and then I can get stuff up to 447 if I want to. There's not a lot of pressure to do higher keys unless I'm trying to push rating or help somebody else get a teleport. So that's great. I mean, it's nice to have 447s in the vault, but it's not either you get a 447 in the vault or you never have one, right? You can make one as long as you're doing 16 or higher. So that, I don't know. I still want to do challenging content, obviously, but removing the pressure and removing that ceiling of it's like, okay, we have to hit a 20 this week so we can keep doing 20s or whatever. It's not as much. Like you want to keep the key high enough that it's relevant, right? You don't want your key to decay to like an 11 or something, but doing 8 20s each week is not really necessary for me at the moment. Also, speaking of dungeons, Dawn of the Infinite came out last week. You may have heard of that. We set up a group to do that like Saturday afternoon, which was a good call because it took us about 2 hours, somewhere in that neighborhood. It is very complex for a 5-player experience. The bosses are like raid bosses, essentially. They have very complex mechanics for a dungeon boss that require a lot of coordination, communication, planning, stuff like that, which was really fun. It was fun to work those out. I mean, we went in there, a couple people had done the dungeon on another character, and then 3 of us hadn't done it at all, and I didn't look at anything. So I was just kind of going by what people were saying and trying to figure it out with my own sort of instincts and boss mods and stuff. I thought the zone looked amazing. It's so cool inside. The story that it tells as you move through is cool and really advances, I think, the overall plot of Dragonflight in a way that we haven't seen with Mega Dungeons before. There's some cool loot in there too. The loot is super relevant for a lot of players, I think. I mean, it drops at 437 and it's upgradable to 441. There's some unique trinkets and stuff in there. I think it's a great gearing option for people that are coming back fresh or whatever. I mean, I think you do probably want to be 420 item level or higher to really get in there, because it is going to beat you up. But the other thing too is you get a ton of aspect crests from there. You get like 5 per boss, and I think you get 15 from the last boss, or 10 from the last boss. 10 from the last boss. So you get 3 full aspect crests from clearing the 8 boss dungeon, which is a great way to get your gear upgraded to the higher threshold, or bank up some crests to get some 447 crafted gear. I didn't expect that. That was awesome. And there's really cool cosmetics in there too. You can get the dragon glyphs to make your dragon riding mounts look like infinite dragonflight dragons, like kind of the black scales with the sort of white and blue effects on them. So you also get like a random Mog. You get random Mog items. There's the mount, which they told us about, but there's also like, I got a mace, and I just like randomly got a mace from Sanctum of Domination is what it turned into, a transmog I didn't have. So that was cool. That's some motivation to run it again. I want to do it a couple more times. There's hard mode, like the Undying hard mode and all that. I don't know if we'll get into all that. I don't know how much I care about doing that for this one, but it was fun, and I definitely want to check it out again. As far as other patch content goes, time rifts, I did a bunch in the main, and they're cool. They're very fast paced, which I like. That's kind of the complaint I've had with some of the other events. Them being once an hour on the hour means they're kind of hard to grind. And some of the cosmetics are really cool, but the gear is not portable. It's not like BOA portable. I really should be doing this on an alt to try to gear up an alt, but it's a crapshoot as to whether or not you're going to get any gear from doing one. So I don't know how valuable it really is for gearing. It seems like real hit or miss for that. Also, I didn't put this in my little rundown here, but Whelp Daycare is everything I wanted it to be so far.
Oh, good.
I think the writing is super charming and cute, and the whelps all have kind of different personalities, and there's some funny little vignettes and some little IGCs and stuff. So I've been having a great time doing that every day. I already got the Black Dragonflight and Red Dragonflight whelpling finished, so that's been really fun, and I highly recommend checking that out if you want a little change of pace thing. And the other thing I got into was, this secret knack stuff. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I was just like, oh, there's a way to craft tier 3 appearances. I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
So the last couple of days, I spent a lot of time in Western Plaguelands and Eastern Plaguelands and MOP Skolamans and then unlocking old Skolamans, and then spending a lot of time in Strat, and then doing a bunch of quests because I needed Argent Dawn rep because I'd never had it. So finally, as of last night, I've unlocked the what you need to do the secret Naxxramas stuff. I haven't actually started doing it yet, but it's such a huge gold sink. Like, I think it's a cool way to bring back in the tier 3 patterns, is to have this kind of secret quest line that you have players go through that really ties in the story of all of this stuff, like Lordaeron, and the Undead Plague in Lordaeron. But then it's like such a huge gold sink. It's like, yeah, if you didn't hang on to your tier 3 from Nax, if you did Nax 60, or if you never had it and you want to look like that, like you're gonna pay for it. This is going to be almost as painful as doing it back then, at least in terms of your wallet. So I don't know. I'll report back on that as I get more into it. But I think it's worth checking out. You can find guides on Wowhead and stuff about how to get started. But basically, you have to start in Miss Pandaria Skolo, and it's a really cool storyline. And if you like that whole Lordaeron vibe from like Warcraft 3 and beyond, like the whole Cult of the Damned and all that stuff, like it's a really cool callback to that story. So that's been a little side project that's been fun this week. So geez, I played a lot of WoW. It's been the most I played for sure since, I don't know, a lot earlier in the expansion, but there's a lot of stuff to do, so no regrets about that. And then just the big news for the week, I guess, is like we finally, after a lot of discussion and conversation, we finally moved our team off of Baelgun, which has been our home for many, many years, since even before I joined, since Wrath of the Lich King. So we moved over to Stormrage. We're going from low pop to full server. Has been a bit of a culture shock so far, but it's cool. And we're basically just moving the whole organization under the Zeros to Heroes umbrella. So that's really exciting. I think it's a great new start for our team. I've lamented on the show a lot about not having people to round out mythic progression nights or, keystone groups. And I think having a wider community to play with and provide opportunities for people to join us and to, share resources across is going to be really valuable for the ongoing health of our team. And Sparty and Case Lock especially were like instrumental in helping us do this and taking the time to, chat with people, get to know people that, I know those guys for a long time now, but not everybody on my team does, of course.
Yeah,
so everybody's been super hospitable and their organization is really cool. So that's really an exciting. I transferred my tune off after 15 and a half years yesterday, and I had a moment. It was a little weird. We've been a really big fish in a really small pond for a very long time. And it was a little emotional. I'm not going to lie to wrap it up and move that tune off. But honestly, it's something we probably should have done collectively, at least before Shadowlands came out. Unfortunately, Blizzard just doesn't support the low pop servers anymore the way that I feel like they need to. And it makes the game worse for you over time. It just keeps getting worse all the time in terms of having people to play with, having a functioning server economy. And so what are you going to do? You invest time and you hope that something's going to change. And when it doesn't, I think eventually the Band-Aid had to come off. And luckily we have these resources and in large part from doing the show, like we know people like Sparty and like Case. And it's like, okay, like we know we're culture compatible. We have similar goals. Like we know it's going to be a good fit in terms of personality. So it's a great opportunity, so that's going to be the future of our team and our experience. And I think everybody who plays with me is probably going to benefit. They're going to get a lot of extra value for their $15 a month.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, overall, it's going to be a more enjoyable experience, and it is I'm glad you gave a shout out to those guys because they do a lot for just the WoW community in general, with Zeros to Heroes and Little Heroes and all these other sort of conglomerate sister guilds, if you will, that come together to make up the overall Death Jester Zeros to Heroes community. It's such a great place for people to get into raiding, get into that sort of thing that I think you guys will find a good home there, and as you said, that'll be a lot more stimulating for your group at least to be able to actually be on a populated server with a populated economy. And really the only downfall to making a move like that is at an expansion launch for the first week and a half, you're going to have a slightly more degraded experience than you would on a low pop server where there's hardly anyone around, right? Whether that means queues you're looking at or it just means that there's, latency issues or whatever it is. I remember beginning of Shadowlands, you were having a grand old time, not having any trouble at all playing through it, and like the game was unplayable on the server that I was on practically. It was very difficult to actually do anything in the game because of them choosing to do a little experiment on their servers and massively overload them on purpose, right? This is what they basically did. They just raised the caps to sort of see what the servers could handle, and by doing that, it made for a really rough launch. So that was an experience, but that's really the only downfall to doing it. Outside of that, there's massive benefits for the rest of the period of time that you're playing the game, where just economy's better, it's easier to find groups, it's more social, you don't have zones that feel dead when there's no one around. Like, it's just overall a better experience. And we've been talking a lot for a while about them needing to do mergers with these smaller servers, shutting down server communities, bundling them together more to sort of try and get the player base more centralized. And I really think it would be a good idea to do. And this is a good time to do it early enough in an expansion where you've seen a large drop off, I imagine by this point, of player base. There'll be a small resurgence with the .5 patch. There'll be a bigger resurgence with .2, and this is kind of that nice window to sort of merge some things together and see what the player base looks like. But we'll see what they choose to do with it. For now, we'll go with what they got. The Knack stuff, man, you mentioned briefly there, but the cost of that is pretty astronomical. It's hard to believe. There's a material you have to buy from the vendor Zacket Skull Smash. He sells a phylactra weave for 2,000 gold a piece, and some of these pieces require 140 or 70 of these phylactra weave to craft. If you want to make an entire set of that tier 9, it's 2.8 million gold to make one of those armors. Consider how many classes there are in the game that had tier 9.
And that's just in vendor mats. That's not your time or any other thing you need to put it together.
Any other mats,
that's just the vendor mats. So yeah, it's a gold sig for sure.
Yeah, it could be 3.5-4 million gold by the time you're done doing everything that you're doing to make that piece. So it's crazy. But black market auction house isn't working out for you when it comes to getting those pieces. Here's a guaranteed way to finish off those sets when you're not making the entire set. it's, obviously becomes a little bit more reasonable for what you're doing. If you're like, man, I've just never been able to get that helm or been able to get those shoulders, whatever it is, off the black market auction house, someone else always managed to take it from me, and I've been watching for weeks to see when it would actually come up. This is your opportunity to just go, all right, you know what, as opposed to putting in 900,000 gold or whatever it is to try and guarantee I get the shoulders, I can craft them, and maybe just the shoulders are going to cost you like, 800k or 500k or whatever it is to make one piece of the gear that you're missing, as opposed to making the entire set for 3.2 or 2.8 million gold, whatever it is, once all the mats sort of come together price wise based off auction house mats and everything else you need for making them. So yeah, it's a cool thing. I'm glad there's a gold sink in the game for it. It's a neat way to acquire the stuff in the game, because it means that players who actually can put the effort into gold making and this kind of stuff can put together these mogs, which they always could previously, because they just do it through the black market auction house. It'd be the piece would go up, they'd do a max gold bid, and then they'd win the piece. That's, they put down 1 million gold on it and they'd win it. So the people who put in the effort to actually making the gold in the game to be able to get these pieces, I think is cool. I think it's good that they've done that, so players who really want them can put the effort into getting them. So yeah, I'm
I think it's a way that they found finally to like reintroduce tier 3 without totally
disvaluing it,
invalidating like people who had it and held onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm not one of those players, so I can't speak for them, and I guess I sort of understand if you're like, oh, that's not right, it should be the way it used to be or whatever. I think players have wanted access to these mogs for a long time, and now they have found a way to reintroduce it into the game in a way that tells a bit of a story and is more of an experience for players to play through, and then requires a lot of commitment in order to be able to craft the entire set. It's not as simple as like, okay, well, this is like on a vendor. It is, but you have to do a lot of work to unlock the vendor, and then you have to spend just an astonishing amount of in-game currency in order to craft up the pieces. So I think it's a decent compromise. Like, I definitely want to have all this stuff unlocked, but I have no real designs on dropping like 3+ million gold right now to get the mogs unlocked. I just want to do it while it's new and while I'm thinking about it. And then if I decide it's something I want to do, or maybe I work on, one piece at a time over time, maybe I do that. Having the option is cool. So I don't know. I've really enjoyed exploring that element of the patch so far.
Yeah, and there's a toy too involved in this, which is the plague grain, where you can put down a box of ordinary grain. Nobody will suspect a thing. It's just normal grain. Don't worry about it. So if you're someone who likes collecting up the toys and whatnot, that's something that exists too, so you can be sure you check that out. I'd hope all these recipes and patterns and stuff will go into the general bin of, hey, if you choose to change your profession later on, these are automatically, relearned with the relearning scroll that they put in ages ago. So hopefully that all falls into it, but we'll see what they choose to do with it. I'm just glad that they've, secret communities found something new. As you said, there's a bit of a puzzle to solve. There's actually multiple puzzles to solve to get to the point where you actually can do this. And then we're now at the point where if people want to get tier 3, they can actually invest to get it. But that's enough about last week. Let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. Okay, this week in World of Warcraft, we got the Dragonflight Dungeon event, which means there's a quest to complete 4 mythic dungeons, and you get the additional piece of loot off of the non-Mythic Plus dungeons that you complete from the Sign of the Warrior buff that is up. There is also a reward for completing those 4. That's a Heroic Avarice Treasures Cache. Get yourself some Avarice gear at the Heroic item level. Just remember that is then able to be upgraded and boosted, which is pretty nice. So it's a great way to get a little piece of gear. Just knock it out 3 Mythic Zeros, even if you're someone who's, as Jason mentioned, trying to gear up, which is a challenge at the moment. There's not a lot of good systems for getting players geared back up. There is a hotfix that came in that we'll talk about later in the show, specifically for people who are boosting characters. But there is not a lot of other ways that don't involve a lot of dedicated time to actually gear up your character quickly. The fastest way currently is to have friends who are already geared who will carry you through things. This is the old World of Warcraft way of gearing a character. This is way back in the day. This is not the Battle for Azeroth, Shadowlands version where you can actually gear up your character quite quickly, just passively on your own. This is definitely the version where you need friends to be able to gear quickly. quickly meaning, hey, I want to get a fully geared toon in a couple of weeks. How do I do it? That's the way to do it. So yeah, I've seen everything from people saying they buy a WoW token a week and they spend that WoW token to buy a carry group, which then carries them through a Mythic 20, which means they get one piece of gear a week, and that's their way of doing it, which is a $20 a week investment in the game, which I think is, depending on the person, not an affordable option. That's not what I'm doing, that's for sure. So yeah, I think that they could probably use some catch-up mechanic for gearing at this point. They just need something that's gonna help people get up to that 430 item level pretty easily. That needs to be kind of the range that people can aspire to get towards, without having to actually beg their friends or put down real money to try and get there in a timely manner, and timely even being over 8 weeks, which isn't really timely. So yeah, I want to see some changes to catch up stuff, and hopefully the dungeon event will help you out. Let's see some more things like this, maybe.
Yeah, the catch-up gear, like I said, from the time rifts is good. I mean, it starts at 402 and it's upgradable, but you can't grind it. So it's you have one chance an hour on one toon, and then good luck, and maybe you get something and maybe you don't. This is a great event. I mean, it's still early enough, and like I said, there's so much good gear in Aberrus, right?
Yeah.
I think almost anything is on the table here from the maybe not set items, but I think the trinkets and cloaks and all the interesting stuff like that is available, and heroic stuff can go up to 441 if you got the flight stones and the crest. So that's a lot of item level. Yeah, you do some mythic plus 2s and 3s or something and just kind of get your feet wet, and you can get some really good gear out of this. And the gear upgrade system, I think, just ties all this stuff together and makes it so good. It's like you don't need as much catch-up gear in a world with the upgrade system, but then you have to get the gear from somewhere.
Exactly.
And this is definitely an event where you can do that. And I'm sure the Dungeon Finder tool is going to be busy this week as people are doing this on many characters, trying to do low keys and stuff, and just blast dungeons out to get the box.
Yeah, that was certainly something I was a fan of with the Valor system, is, hey, you could do a Mythic plus 2, get a piece of loot from that, and acquire Valor for the week, and then just spend the Valor to upgrade that piece over and over and over again until you're at a comparable item level to actually be able to do raiding and those sorts of activities. And since the Valor cap shifted as the expansion went on, you could just, if you had a 2-week period where you could play the game a whole bunch, you could basically gear your entire character by just, farming Valor nonstop, getting even low item level pieces and chaining them up with upgrades with Valor to be able to get a character geared. And I do miss that with the current system, because you're right, you need to get that initial piece that is upgradable to a certain point, and if you don't have that stepping stone piece to be able to get you there, of this type of idea where you get a heroic piece of raid loot for doing this event, you just can't get to that item level. It's just total barrier blocking you off from it. So I do think that they should revisit this system. I don't think that this current gearing system, in my opinion, first and foremost, I find it's awkward with the amount of stuff that fills up my bags. And then secondly, I find it unfortunate that there's so many different tiers that you can get trapped at a lower item level if you cannot get opportunities like this to get that higher item level piece. So we'll see how the whole thing pans out, but I kind of miss the Valor thing right now, I have to say.
I think this is better overall, but there are some pain points for sure, and I think no system is perfect. But I think the good thing about this system is it's more flexible, because you do get the huge discounts after you upgrade a slot beyond a certain item level, which makes it's not like, I don't want to waste the stuff I've earned to get this little bit of power because it's not the perfect item. Like, you don't have to do that whole thing, right? That song and dance that we did with Valor. It kind of is unfortunate that you can't take something from like a +2 that dropped and take it all the way up to 441.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually good in a way, because it encourages people to do higher level content. If you're somebody who's doing 16s and up, and like you need maxed out gear to push your rating, or like to whatever, power up your character for the next raid boss, you should be doing stuff that's like in that skill bracket. +2s and +3s should be for people who are checking out the system, maybe playing a lower gear character, a character they're not as familiar with. Maybe they're newer to the game. Maybe they just like a more casual style of dungeon. It shouldn't be people who are trying to blast out the other side 15 times in a day, and you're trying to speed run a +2 over and over again to get a particular trinket to drop. Like, I don't think that's good overall for the player community. I think it's better to say, like, okay, if you want the powerful items, you have to do the more advanced content, and the less advanced content is going to be for the less advanced player or character. So I think like that it's good in a way. The other thing, I guess, is that having the full dungeon pool refresh really helps with the reacquisition problem, right? Reacquiring the same item over and over again every 6 months was really obnoxious for totally most of Shadowlands. So, you know, I think that it would be cool if they could tweak the system to be currency. And I don't know if that's like a tech limitation or something right now. But yeah, because having 8 different items in your bags all the time is obnoxious, especially when you're not putting it on your character and you're not using it for anything in the game world, right? Yeah. Like, you use it to buy power from a vendor. So it would be cool if, like, whatever the next expansion version of the system is, if they carry it forward, they could do it as a currency. I think that would really take some of the, it would smooth the rough edges down a bit. So we'll see. I mean, I think it was really bold to redo itemization in the game to this level in like a .1 patch, but
I agree. Yep.
I think for the most part, it's been a win. I mean, it feels so good to use on a weekly basis and just work your way through the system. So, there's a lot of good stuff there.
I think the trickiest point for me in all of this is the notion that there's so many different tiers of that, which I think creates the issue of the item bloat inside your bags and creates the issue of, oh, this piece caps out at 421, but I wanted to be able to get something that's beyond 421. Oh, I have to go and do this content. And like you said, that should be encouraging players to go and do that higher level content. It should be a way of them knowing, oh, once you've pushed this to 421, it's time to move on to the next tier of content. I just don't know if that's actually working, and I would love for Blizzard to weigh in on how well that's actually working to push players to do the next thing, and how much it's just sort of blockading players, and they're just kind of going, well, I'm done. That is the concern that I kind of have between the two. So it'd be interesting to hear from Blizzard as to how successful they feel the system's been, because I just question whether or not players are going, I've capped out, I'm not going to be a heroic raider, I'm not interested in being a heroic raider, but it also means I no longer have gear to push, so I'm just going to chill as opposed to actually pushing beyond and maybe killing a few heroic bosses because towards the end of the expansion they just feel so overgeared. It's an interesting system. I want to keep our eyes on it. I agree with you that it was bold of them to change it up. I just wish that there was maybe fewer tiers of variance between them with larger push areas and less currency, and it'd be interesting to look at. I don't know. I think breaking it up into 2 as opposed to 4 would have been interesting to see. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes as the expansion goes on. Hopefully Blizzard weighs in and lets us know. Other stuff that we can look at this week. Obviously, you want to be doing your Aiding the Accord to get yourself that. You have to earn the 3K rep to then earn the rep with all the factions, which is a great way to sort of catch up on all of your reputations if you haven't been doing that very much. There's also the fighting is its own reward from doing 5 heroic dungeons. You pick up that quest if you want inside Valdrakken. That gets you some 415 eye level gear or 15 Drake Shadowflame crest fragments. As well as some reputation with the 5 factions. PvP quests for the week are random battlegrounds and rated battlegrounds. So you can be sure you're picking up those quests before you hop into your random or your rated battlegrounds if you're doing that this week. The brawl for the week is Temple of Hot Magoo. This is actually one of my favorite brawls. You go into basically the Temple of Hot Magoo and you end up with basically the ability to throw the orbs of power around to other players. Basically, as you sort of hold the orb for longer, you get a boosted stack that increases your damage done and your damage received and your healing done. And you can charge that up, throw it to your buddy. Your buddy can blow those cooldowns and blow someone up and have a good old time. Or you can throw it to your buddy and watch them just explode because the whole team turns towards them and destroys them, which I think is hilarious. It's also a faster resurrection. It's only a 5-second timer on resurrections. So it makes for a lot of fun getting in there and doing some Temple of Hot Magoo. If that's something you're interested for the week, you get the Something Different quest, which means if you win a brawl for the week, you get some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor.
Super fast paced. Talking about time rifts being fast paced. That's nothing compared to Hot Mogu, right? So
yeah,
this is fun. I mean, I don't know. I very casual PvPer myself, but one of the things that I always find frustrating is being dead in a battleground, right? And like waiting for the timer.
Yep.
These are really short res timers. You don't get bored waiting for the res timer in Hot Mogu. So that's pretty cool. I like that part about it.
Mm-hmm. It feels a lot less punishing to die, and especially in Temple of Hot Mogu, where a lot of the strategy is like rotating in a big circle constantly. I find that if you die inside that battleground in particular, you can end up on the other side of the arena from your team, which feels really bad because trying to get back to your team through the enemies can result in you dying again, which then puts you on timer again, which then means wait again, and it's really not fun. So yes, I am glad to see that with a reduced timer. It's a lot more fun that way. Okay, Zakali Elders are the world bosses up inside Zeralek Caverns. If you're looking to get yourself some 415 eye level loot, be sure you knock them out for the week. There's also Liskanoth, the Future Bane. It's the Ice Proto Dragon in Thaldraszus. You can knock this guy out for some 395 gear. Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Tyrannical, Storming, and Raging, meaning bosses have more health and deal increased damage. While in combat, enemies periodically summon damaging whirlwinds. And non-boss enemies enrage at 30% health remaining, temporarily granting them immunity to crowd control effects until defeated. So, okay, man, Tyrannical, Storming, Raging. At least Tyrannical and Raging don't actually overlap and are symbiotic with each other. It does put players in a situation where Tyrannical bosses are a bit easier because they're not dealing with Raging during it, but whirlwinds from Storming are going to affect you in bosses. They are area denial. They can basically knock you up in the air a little bit and put you into a situation where it's a little bit more difficult for you to actually complete the task you're looking to do. And the added damage just in general from those whirlwinds can play a factor as well. So Jason, what do you think about this week in M+?
Well, I want to point out, first of all, that we are back to the first week of the rotation.
That's true.
This is week 11 somehow of this season, so we have seen all 10 combos. Mm-hmm. This is the combo that we started with, and overall, I think this is a pretty good Tyrannical week, honestly, although have fun in Vortex Pinnacle with Tyrannical Storming. Yeah, that can be kind of obnoxious. Raging is not too bad, especially the mobs are already not buffed to begin with, right? And I'm pretty sure you can still soothe it off, even though they changed what Raging does. I think it's still dispellable. So if you have a rogue, a druid, a hunter in your group, then Raging can just go away, which is really nice if you need to, CC something or whatever that's enraged. But overall, like, Trash is going to die pretty fast, Raging or not, I feel like. Storming can be disruptive, but I also think it's highly dungeon dependent. I think Storming is a lot worse in some dungeons than others, depending on how tight the quarters are and how close the like the packs are together and stuff, like how much room you have to deal with getting away from a Storming or getting knocked up in the air by a Storming potentially. I mean, really, the more I play the season, and now I've played enough of this season to feel like I really have a handle on it. Like, I think the whole thing this season is boss execution, and that includes on Fort Weeks. Like, many of the keys that I have failed to time and been frustrated about have been on Fort Weeks and because of boss execution. Even when bosses are easy, if you don't do it right, you die, and the timers just don't support you having a boss wipe. So you're going to move through these dungeons fast this week. You don't have an on death. You don't have ghosts coming out of the corpses that you then have to walk away from and are holding you in combat. You don't have to worry about stuff on the ground. So you should move through Trash. You should pull pretty big probably, and try to save some time that way, because bosses are going to be long. That's the extra 30% is a lot of health, and the per rank scaling is very high these days. So overall, if you can execute the bosses in this season, I think you can beat the timers, and that's really what it comes down to. So can you beat the bosses? Can you execute when you have to execute for 30% longer is what the question becomes this week. And yeah, a good thing to do is if you'd have like your tank, for example, just eat the Stormings, just deal with the minor disruption, get popped up, get repositioned, and let everybody else just do their thing. I mean, I try to eat them whenever I can, whenever it's safe for me to do so. And I feel like it helps people out a lot, because it's just one less thing for them to have to think about. So, give it a shot. If you're in a spot where you could stand in that tornado and you're not going to die or get like knocked off a platform or knocked into, something terrible, then just eat it, take the minor disruption and let the rest of your team do their thing.
Yeah, the tanks soaking those makes a big difference, certainly helps the team out a lot when it comes to your range, your healer in particular, not getting disrupted, so nice to have the support of your tank during all that. Okay, micro holiday coming up this month is the Auction House Dance Party. This means the auction house, the main auction houses, because there are multiple inside Stormwind and Orgrimmar, have been cleaned out and turned into dance parties for the day. You can head on in there, and the dance floor is all lit up. It's very Saturday Night Fever, light up floor, have a good time, lots of disco balls, that kind of idea, with a DJ booth and everything else, and you can celebrate there. However, just keep in mind, this is also worth a bunch of Traveler's Log points if you actually go and participate in this event. So if you're someone who's still trying to finish off your Traveler's Log, I'm pretty sure you just have to go in and dance, like do a slash dance inside of the Auction House Dance Party, and you get yourself a bunch of points. So be sure you pay attention to your Traveler's Log if you're still trying to get that mount for the month. It's that Netherwing mount's wicked. It's definitely worth picking up. So if you haven't done that yet, here's your opportunity to get something new. So definitely participate.
And don't forget, there's 2 auction houses in Stormwind. I don't play Horde enough to know if there's more than one in Orgrimmar, but if you're playing on Saturday, and you're like, oh, I need to use the auction house, but there's a dance party here, go to the Dwarven District and you can do your auction house business. Don't forget that it's there.
Or find your nearest Brutosaur is the other option for that.
Yeah, there you go. Or I guess there's an auction house in Valdrakken anyway. So if you happen to be in Stormwind, then yeah. But this is a cool event. I mean, I think the presentation for this is really cool. It's utterly pointless, right? Nothing happens if you participate in this. But if you're hanging out in a main city on Saturday and you want to do something a little bit different, do that. And yeah, good point about the Traveler's Log. I mean, I've been using exclusively the Dragon Riding Nether Drake since I unlocked it earlier this month. And this is easy completion points for that. So if you don't have it done yet, like pick up some points there because it's such a cool looking mount.
Yeah, it really is.
You don't want to miss out on it. Somehow we're already halfway through July. I don't know where it's all going, but you are starting to run out of time a little bit, and I think this might be the last micro holiday of the month. So yeah, check it out if you need Traveler's Log.
Yeah, definitely worthwhile doing. Hot fixes for the week. They've resolved an issue with Death Knights in PvE. I believe they were getting the PvP number of Army of the Dead ghouls spawning as opposed to the PvE number. So you're getting too few ghouls. So you're now raising the right amount. So hopefully you feel like your army is an army and not just, a party of ghouls. The Evokers augmentation stuff all went live this past week. And so understandably, there was a whole bunch of fixes that came in for Evokers, particularly around augmentation. They made it so that Motes of Possibility will now reduce the cooldown on Avatar for all warrior specializations instead of Shield Wall, Recklessness, and Colossal Smash. So that's a change up for you, Jason. You can worry less about avataring as much, but you do obviously have to pay attention to the Shield Wall, Recklessness, and Colossal Smash that it's not going to be reducing.
Well, I kind of like this because I have a lot of baked in CDR for Shield Wall, right? Like I spec into that. I want to reduce cooldown on Shield Wall, and I already have that. And more avatars is good because then it's more damage and it's more throughput and stuff. So that's fun. I'm never going to complain about having more access to Avatar, I guess. Plus, the other thing is if you're in combat, like it's almost never a bad time to Avatar, sort of, right? Whereas Shield Wall, like you need for certain purposes. There's times where you want to have it or you're like planning out your cooldowns based on whenever things are going to hit. So reduced cooldown, it might be good and it might be pointless. If you can get more avatars in during a fight, then you're going to get more damage out. You're going to get more throughput. So it's cool. Plus also, I guess it's simpler for them to do instead of having it reduce the cooldown of different abilities per spec. It just if it's a warrior, it does this. That's got to be easier for them to keep a handle on.
Probably, yeah. I agree with that. Apparently, Upheaval was having the old mage arcane missiles issue where if you cast Upheaval on a target while you could actually have it in line of sight and see it, and then it ran behind a pillar, it would actually continue to cast Upheaval even though the target was out of line of sight. It now obviously no longer does that. They fixed that. That used to be a really big point of contention during arena matches with mages where they'd lock onto you with a spell and didn't matter where you went, the missiles were coming. That is something I'm glad they fixed ages ago. So I'm glad that they're looking at this for Upheaval. They also adjusted Fate's mirror visual to be less overwhelming when many instances of damage occur in a short period of time. Yeah, overwhelming is never a word I want for visual effects inside of World of Warcraft. I love that they already put in the ability to tamp down other people's spell effects. So whenever they come up against someone or something that is causing this, I'm glad that they can adjust it and fix it up for players. No one enjoyed the flashbang that was paladin abilities back in the day. That was quite the thing. A player may now only benefit from a maximum of 4 of each. And that means Ebonmite, Prescience, and Shifting Sands effects. So these effects obviously can happen if you have multiple evokers, multiple augmentation evokers inside the group at the same time. They're now capping that out to sort of make it so, yeah, you can't get like 12 of these. You can't have like, I'm affected by 6 Ebonmites. Let's roll. Like that's not a thing. So they're adjusting that down. So make sure that that's in line. So outside of that, we saw some.
Well, I just want to chime in because this really, we didn't really hit on it too much, but like this was our first week playing with augmentation evokers, and I got to say it's cool, man. It's really it's weird. It's a different thing, but I did a bunch of keystones with people running augmentation, and one guy in particular was playing a bunch with us, and he was really enjoying the play style. It was a different kind of management that he was doing, and like his damage output in details was low, but he was boosting our other 2 DPS to just absurd levels of damage, and it just felt really good. I think it's cool to add a different element. I mean, yes, we've seen things with like a single player. I mean, the single player Ebonmite changed, I think, will go a long way, because you've seen people doing really wacky stuff like 22 augmentation evokers buffed to DK, and look at what happened. You know what I mean? Like, obviously they don't want the game, like the game shouldn't play like that, but I mean, it seems like augmentation gives you an alternative where, okay, you can contribute some damage and you have that type of play style, but your own kind of rotation is a lot less to micromanage, and you're helping out your team, and like it shows up in terms of how fast stuff dies, even if like your bar isn't as long. But if that's what you care about, is having the longest bar, then this probably isn't the spec for you. But if what you care about is like having fun with a group and crushing some bad guys, then I didn't know what to think of it before it came in, but having played a lot with an Aug Evoker in Dungeons this week, I was really impressed. It was really fun to play with. The little movement speed buff, even like when we're outside of combat or whatever, that just has a lot of nice little touches that that add a lot to even a small group. So I had a lot of fun playing with Aug Evokers this week. So far so good. Like, yes, obviously there are edge cases where you could do some really ridiculous stuff by stacking them up, but that I feel like that's kind of to be expected when you're pushing out a brand new spec and you have all these interactions to consider. So I don't know. So far, so good. I hope people like it, and that adds a different element to the game. It seems like a great choice for somebody who wants to contribute damage but isn't a huge min-maxer, or maybe it could be like a raid leader spec, right? Like you have these couple things to kind of worry about, and you maintain those, and you do your little rotation, but then you're like in the middle of the group. You're not in melee, but you're not at full range, and you can kind of see stuff and call it out, and you're really concerned with what other people's positioning and cooldown timing and stuff. Like, I don't know. It could be like a lower, like a lower impact spec to play for people who have like leadership or mechanical responsibilities that still contributes a lot to the group. That's an element that I didn't really foresee, but maybe that could be something that is like a huge benefit of having an augment evoker or 2 in your group.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how player feedback sort of pans out over the coming months, as far as what we're seeing with their impact inside Raid as well as Dungeons. So far, what I've heard from those who've played it in Dungeons is they really have fun with it, and those who play it in Raids are not having as much fun. So I'll be curious to see how that continues in a trend and what has it sort of established. First week, hard to actually make any real judgments other than, hey, I hope you guys are having fun learning something new. All right, mages, you got yourselves some AoE nerfs that came through. They basically increased... they reduce the damage of all of your abilities by 5%. Then they also reduce Flame Strike, Flame Patch, and Sun King's Blessing to basically reduce some damage down as well. So you got yourself some nerfs on fire. Frost also saw damage reductions. So did Arcane actually saw some damage increases, but also some damage reductions. So mages in general feeling a bit of that nerf bat this week, getting themselves a little more in line. They were apparently quite overtuned, so this is, Blizzard resolving the issue. And obviously, I think we'll see more changes like this, tweaking things along as augmentation becomes more popular, because it's going to really highlight those niche cases where things are overtuned and are happening a little bit too much. We also saw this come down with Holy Paladin. All their healing was reduced by 8%, as well as all their damage was decreased by 12%. So Holy Paladins also saw a pretty, actually 12% reduced damage is a substantial nerf for a healing spec, so just keep that in mind. They also made it so that Paladins now regenerate 55% less mana in PvP combat, as opposed to 25% less mana, so they're also trying to take care of some mana issues that were happening in the PvP realm for Holy Pallies. Outside of that, there wasn't a ton of other massive changes that happened to classes. There were some tweaks and fixes here and there, but nothing major. If you want to check out the changes for your classes, not all of them are represented because not all of them actually got changed. Dungeons and raids. As far as dungeons and raids go, obviously they rolled out a new mega dungeon, so we're going to be seeing some fixes that come in for the mega dungeon, and there's still a lot of mechanics people are learning how to do. I don't know about how many people actually ran it multiple times last week, but unless you're running it a whole bunch of times, you probably don't even know what some abilities are called yet, or how the mechanics fully work and how they fully affect each other. But they did go in and they changed some stuff for the Time Lost Battlefield, where they fixed an issue where the Alliance Destroyer and Horde Destroyer could fire volatile mortar outside of the encounter arena. If you're clearing bosses out with cannons, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Just keep that in mind. The players firing stuff outside of the arena is not wise to do. So, they fixed that one to make sure that no one's taking advantage of that. They also fixed an issue with Chronoloord Dios, where the final group of enemies could be attacked while they're performing their intro conversation, meaning they just were standing there having a conversation as you ran up with little sticks and started poking them in the calves to try and defeat them. Yeah, that's not a thing. You shouldn't be doing that. So they made sure that these are now basically immune during the conversation, and then you can attack them after they finish the conversation. So you're not getting a whole bunch of free DPS time, which, hey... You know,
they're the ones that are standing there talking. Like, I feel like this should be fair game, but hey.
It should interrupt the lore is what should happen. If someone attacks them, it should just interrupt the story, and you don't get to hear the story. You just fight them. But,
well, I mean, normally stuff like this, once it starts breaking, it breaks an instance entirely. So, it's like, oh, this thing didn't play, so now the next thing that's supposed to play after that doesn't know that it's supposed to play.
Yeah.
That was like Castle Nathria, when it first came out, had a bunch of issues like that, where various scripted events just didn't happen in the dungeon, or they didn't happen consistently, and then you couldn't get through a gate to do the next part of the dungeon.
Yep.
That was fun.
They also fixed another issue with Chronoloord Dios where it would only cause his Infinity Orb ability would only cause a single Infinity Orb to fall, as opposed to multiple Infinity Orbs. These are the orbs that fall from the sky, that when you stand below them, it slows how fast they fall, because you want one to hit the ground before the other, because you want the debuff you get from the one hitting the ground to go away before the other one does. So when only one spawns, you basically can just ignore it. So they fixed that issue. So if you're doing Chronoloord Dios this week, you should have a little bit more difficulty actually just clearing out the mobs before the boss, and then obviously during the boss you got to be paying attention to both of those orbs, because there will be two that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, it's the last boss of a pretty hard and boss centric dungeon. So I mean, I don't know when this occurred. By the time I did it, there were definitely two orbs falling. So that is one of the main mechanics to manage in that fight. Which, if cutting that in half, I could see how that would kind of make the gameplay not what they want it to be.
Yeah. As far as Aberrus goes, we did see some nerfs to Mythic Rashok the Elder. Searing Slam, Overcharge, and Conduit Flare all got their damage reduced on Mythic difficulty, so teams that were struggling with that on Mythic should have an easier time getting through Rashok now, which is good. They also addressed an issue preventing Preservation Evoker's Cycle of Life from working properly during the Magmorax encounter. It should be actually able to heal people, and if it wasn't, then that's a problem. So I'm glad that got resolved as well. Jason, you want to talk a little bit about the time rifts and the changes that came in for them? Because they went through a ton of stuff in time rifts.
Yeah, there's a lot of changes to time rifts. Now, time rifts are, one of the things with them is that so many players funnel in to do them that the server kind of stops working. Like when you get to the end boss, like, I don't know, I can't even usually play by tune. That was even before I moved to Storm Rage, and now doing a couple in Storm Rage. It's like, yeah, I'm here. Hopefully the game registers that I'm here and I get credit for it.
Yeah.
But, that's just going to be an issue. The way the internet is constructed, if you put that many players all sending instructions to the game servers, you're going to have those problems. I don't know why they don't cap it lower or something, like shard people out into different instances or something. But anyway, that's the way they work. So expect a lot of weird latency and stuff when you're doing time rifts, especially while they're new. One thing that was nice is that what they've been doing is making tuning changes to make it easier to fill the bar, right? You have to get like 7,500 temporal essence as you do this, as a group, not you yourself, but as everybody who's participating in it, everybody who has talked to the NPC to say, I want to do this. And then at 2,500, 5,000, 7,500, you get a box that has paracausal flakes, which is the stuff you use to buy the cosmetics. So you want to get 7,500 if you can. And so they've done stuff to like up the spawn rate, make more enemies spawn, make enemies be worth more temporal essence. All kinds of changes like that have been really good. At first, I was having an issue, like even with a decently populated sort of shard that I was playing in, like getting the full reward, there wasn't enough stuff to do for the players that we had to fill the bar up. And now it seems better since these changes. I definitely noticed the spawn rate increase, even though it was only like a couple seconds or something. It really adds up. You have a lot of the tasks that you get to do during it are like kill as many enemies as you can for 40 seconds or whatever. And so getting that many more spawns in that window helps a lot. There's some of the usable items and stuff that you could pick up while you're out there. That stuff got fixed because it wasn't behaving properly. And I mean, there's a lot of items and stuff involved in these events, so that kind of makes sense. One cool thing is they put in a fix for there's like a weekly quest to do one, and when you complete it, you get a reward that has some stuff in it. It has some paracausal flakes. It has a Sorodormi rep token. That stuff is BOA now. So you can funnel all of your flakes to like one character so you can buy, the cosmetics that you want. That's a really nice change. And that's come in since the first time I did it. So that was a nice surprise this week when I did it earlier today. But yeah, just a lot of changes to like certain mob behavior and bug fixes and stuff. But I think the tuning changes have made it feel a lot better already. I guess the question will be, as the participation starts to wane, do they stay on top of this? Because this might need more adjustment. If you have like a shard bricking amount of players in here doing this when it's a week old, fine. But once everybody has the stuff they want and they stop doing it, then how do you even do this, right? Like there might need to be some rebalancing around contribution rates, spawn rates, what have you.
That's like the elites in the open world right now. People complaining there's not enough players around to actually do the elites and kill the elites that you want to kill if you aren't, a fully geared or an upper geared character. So yeah, just needing to revisit those and look at how that scaling might work, like how reduce their health total so it actually is doable by one or two players depending on where they're sort of at in a lower item level area, and then have them scale dramatically as more people engage it or whatever it is to make that happen.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a problem for another day because right now obviously participation is going to be pretty high for a while, but that is sort of like the ongoing challenge, I guess, of adding all these public events. You have a new public event come in, and then you have like a wild sort of roller coaster in participation from when it's new to like then keeping it in the game perpetually. So right now, not a problem, but it's kind of interesting to see how they approach this to begin with in terms of tuning the event to make it rewarding. So kind of gives you an idea of like, okay, here's some things they could potentially look at doing going forward as participation drops off.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Outside of that, we got some item reward increases here. This is what I mentioned earlier in the show, where basically the gear granted from boosts has been increased in item level by 13. This is retroactive, so if you have a boosted character that you've put up in the past, their gear will now just have 13 more item levels on it. This is nice, this feels like it should be 26 or 30, but it's 13. So they're giving you something to sort of get you going character-wise if you're coming back from a boost. So hopefully this helps out the players who are doing that, because, it's a little tricky right now to catch up. So,
and retroactive changes are always great.
Yes.
That's what we love, is when you see that word retroactive on a change about gear getting buffed, is not, hey, you got to go get more of this, you got to buy another boost or something.
Yeah. Now the Secrets of Naxxramas stuff has sort of been discovered. Obviously, they're working their way through some hot fixes for some of this stuff. So Invader Scourge Stones can now be exchanged prior to unlocking Corruptor Scourge Stones at the Light's Hope Chapel. They're also working their way through things like Wards of Naxxramas from the Eyes of Naxxramas should now correctly drop the eligible player, drop for the eligible player while in a group. You have to remember to equip your Argent Dawn commission when you're trying to get these as well. So there's a lot of little things getting fixed that I assume they probably got a whole bunch of tickets to, since the secret community kind of caught on to all of this and people started diving into it last week. As far as user interface goes, probably some of the largest user interface bug fixes / most important ones that I've seen. They fixed a bug causing the delete character button to select a different character than intended. Yeah. If you're trying to delete a character and it picks the wrong one for you and deletes it, you're gonna be upset. You're gonna be upset.
You mean you don't want to just roll the dice when you push the delete character button?
Yeah, I don't think anyone wants to. Yeah,
I mean, why not? I like you can undelete characters and stuff, but yeah, like nobody wants to deal with that. And this was appropriate because I'm in the process. I was in the process last week of like transferring, realm transferring my tune, and it's like, well, I have a tune parked over there, like squatting on a name I want to use, and like I got to delete that. But like, what's gonna happen? Is it gonna delete another character in my account, or what do I do? I better just wait until the bug, because they identified the bug, but they didn't. I don't think they fixed it till like the day after, or maybe even 2 days later. I don't remember, but we knew that the delete character bug was out there for a little bit. It was like, oh, of course we have such a bug like this week when I actually need to delete a character that is only in existence to be deleted.
Yep. So, yeah, I'm glad they fixed that one. The other one was they fixed a bug causing displayed health to not update and match the actual health values that existed. Jason experienced this by basically seeing a boss mob's health always stay at 100% with the bar over its head, but then progressively drop when he actually selected it inside of its frame. My concern for something when I see this would be like, hey, is my character health not updating when I'm looking at it, so I don't know how low I am on health? Because that would be my concern when I see something like this. So I'm glad they resolved the health problem that existed, and everything's displaying properly now. They resolved an issue.
Yeah, we were doing heroic Sark last week, and I'm looking at Sark's health bar over his head. And we're like at the end of phase 1, and I'm like, okay, how much damage did we do to Sark so far? Normally around 60-ish% by the end of phase 1, 62, sub 65, and the bar looked like it was totally full, and that's when I knew that it must have been bugged, because I look at the frame on down lower on my screen, and oh yeah, it's about where I would expect it to be. So
yeah,
didn't seem like it affected gameplay at all, but yeah, it could result in some weird UI behavior.
Yep. And then they also resolved an issue where players who are riding a druid around as a mount, when entering travel portals in Dawn of the Infinite, would become stuck until logging out. If you're riding your druid friends around, apparently, Dawn of the Infinite portals don't like you. So you were just getting stuck inside the portals and you couldn't go anywhere until you logged your character in and out again. And so they resolved that one. Again,
funny. It's a very specific circumstance.
I'm curious as to how many tickets they received from people that were doing this. I very rarely have people choose to ride my druid around when I'm doing things. I guess there was some people just having a good time, and unfortunately this came up as a bug. Okay. Let's dive into some blue posts that we got going on here. So upcoming changes for the Echoing Tearstone Trinket. This comes in from Bornak saying, we wanted to give everyone a heads up regarding an upcoming change to the Echoing Tearstone, the healing trinket from Dawn of the Infinite Mega Dungeon. The heal currently restores all nearby allies a flat amount of health, but with this change, it will be split among the targets within its radius and deals increased healing based on how many targets received it. And with the heal now being split among those targets, we've also increased the healing amount so that it can be recorded. That can be recorded by 70%. We are making this change as we've seen this trinket performing strongly in raids, to the point of competing with major class cooldowns, but its performance overall is varied based largely on how many people are with the healer, basically are near the healer. We're hoping that this change to its functionality will help stabilize its performance in both dungeons and raids so that it doesn't under or overperform as much as it currently does. It's just a heads up to the people that this trinket's going to get adjusted. We typically see this with, new trinkets that come into the game. It typically is only trinkets that this runs into a problem with because they're the things that have the wackiest effects on them. So a static amount being healed versus a varied amount being healed can be a massive benefit if you're talking about a raid team where everyone clumps up on top of the healer and gets one big ridiculous heal from the trinket procs going off, and having stack points where people do that, and et cetera, versus having a varied amount based off how many people are nearby can still be strong, but also is not going to be nearly as strong if it splits it. And obviously if you have 20 people standing on top of your character, it's then split dramatically amongst all those people. So yeah, just keeping that in mind, that trinket will not be as strong as it used to be if you were counting on it.
And also maybe not as bad in some other situations too, I guess. Like that's kind of the upside, right? I think they want the trinket to be an interesting choice, but they don't want it to overperform, but they also don't want it to be so situational that it's hard to justify using, I guess. So, I think the change kind of makes sense. I don't think I played with anybody who had it drop, and so I didn't really experience how it was being used. But worth noting, it may change sort of your priority list for what your trinkets are looking like in this patch. If maybe this was really desirable before, it may be now not as good. But then again, if it's less niche in terms of how you can use it effectively, then it may be better than another middling trinket that you may be stuck with. So I don't know, something to think about. I think having like interesting loot in the game creates these sort of choices and these sort of paths you go down. So that's kind of cool. But obviously it's fun to just have like the overpowered thing that like when you're in a big group, you just do this and then the big thing happens. But there are obviously reasons why they would want to design more compelling choices into the game than that, I guess.
Yeah. Cross-realm trading is temporarily disabled. This comes in from Bornak saying, cross-realm trading has been temporarily disabled while we address an issue causing realm instability. An update will be provided when this feature is re-enabled. Thank you for your patience. This is one of those things that I threw out there as a problem that could crop up back when we first heard cross-realm trading was going to be enabled. It's just the amount of traffic that then happens between these servers and realms as people start trading things much more vigorously and freely. The auction house does slow that down as an actual thing. So, and servers are kind of designed around handling the auction house, and they've kind of, worked the code for it. So cross-realm trading predictably could cause issues like this, and I'm glad that they're shutting it down as opposed to just watching server performance slowly tank because of what's happening with it. So we'll get it back. The plan is to have it enabled again. We'll see it again. It's not going away forever.
Yeah, it's still like a planned feature for the game. I mean, anytime they change some of this, back end stuff, there's ripples and unforeseen stuff, and there's going to be performance hits. But sometimes, I guess there's performance hits they can live with, and I guess they couldn't live with this one. So, hopefully, it comes back soon. It's a great feature, especially for somebody in my circumstance who suddenly has a bunch of stuff that I want to trade cross realm, but I also want the game to work. It's that I gotta weigh those two things, and I'd rather have the game like work well enough. It's not like they're canceling this, but it's weird because it was this, and also the sell all junk button was supposed to come in this patch, and they push it to 10.17.
I know. I'm sad, man. Yeah.
Some back end challenges, I guess, with some of these elements of the game right now.
Yeah. Okay, well, we were correct in our presumption that the development blog that they predicted, they said was coming this week, is in fact related to what's going to be hitting the PTR. Fury Incarnate is going to be hitting, I think has actually already hit the PTR on a very small scale, as we typically see. It's basically like a mirror of the current game with like one or two things tagged in. But this is a blog post that highlights what we should be seeing coming up. All right. Fury the Incarnate, Jason. We're going to be doing these public Dream Surge events that are going to be taking place.
Yeah, I don't know if you could believe this, but new Dragonflight patch, new public event.
I know, right? It's
I know
on theme. On theme.
Buckle up. It seems pretty cool, though. I mean, I'll just read what they put here. Each week, one of the 4 original zones in the Dragon Isles will be affected by Waking Dream portals across the zones. For those who seek an additional challenge, encounters with rare creatures and event bosses will also have a chance to drop upgraded gear. And there's also, I'm just going to weave this into the PTR notes that went up as well. Let's see. It says World Quest will be focused on the zone. Extra activities and weeklies will be active. Group rares will have new powers and a chance to drop upgraded gear. And new Waking Dream portals, think invasions, will open across the zone. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
A major Waking Dream portal will open as a group event every half hour. Defeating it will require a large group of players and has a chance to reward raid level gear. Minor Waking Dream portals can be found scattered across the zone and can be defeated by solo players or small groups. Players in the Dream Surge will gain access to a variety of buffs that range from useful to powerful to chaotic. Every half hour, a new buff will be selected for the whole region, with the players themselves choosing which one via collecting and voting, turning in Dream Surge Coalescence, an item that can be earned by doing activities including World Quest, finding hidden stashes, and killing group rares. So this is cool. Obviously, like Emerald Dream themed. If you played through the campaign questing in Dragonflight, kind of a meatball hanging out there about the Emerald Dream and stuff as part of like Onaran Plains, I think it was, or maybe it was partially that, and it was also the Feldrack and Accord campaign quest, I think, that unlocked. So I kind of tying it back to that now, moving, we kind of have our moment in this patch, I guess, for Nasdormu and for the bronze, and then we're moving on to the green for the next one, the Emerald Flight. So I like the concept of this. I think this is going to be where your like mid-season, end-of-season catch-up gear, it sounds like, is really going to come from. Yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do cool. I mean, this is, the Emerald Dream and all that stuff. That's so tied into sort of like the Night Elf aesthetic that I love about the game so much and have really liked about Warcraft since the Warcraft 3 days. So I'm looking forward to seeing what we're collecting from this and how stuff looks and how this really works. And I mean, the last .7 patch was where I started really getting in there with alts and getting leveled up and getting like some gear. And it kind of petered off fast because then we moved right into season 2 and then I had other priorities. But, I feel like you have a much more persistent kind of, this sounds like a much more persistent feature than the time rifts. Like, yeah, you have stuff on the half hour, so it's already twice as much as the rifts go. Plus, you just by the way to describe it, you have more of a focus on catch-up gear. And then you also have all this other stuff to do in the zone that ties into it. So it seems like a good opportunity to, maybe take some alts for a spin through here. And the theming seems really cool. Like, obviously, the theming like hits home for me. So, I haven't checked out PTR yet. I haven't seen or heard much about it. I haven't really been in that mode for years of like paying super close attention to PTR gameplay, just notes, but I think this sounds like a cool way to lead into season 3 for sure.
I agree with you entirely. The only thing that stands out to me about this event that I'm like, is this is very quickly becoming the currency expansion, where everything that they put into the game has a different and new currency. And so trying to keep track of all of the currencies that then affect all of the mechanics is becoming a bit of a hard thing to do. And if we stay on track the way we're doing, there's going to be like 35 or 36 different currencies by the time this expansion ends, which is going to be insane. So I do feel like I wish that there was a bit, I wish it felt like there was more of a grand plan around currencies in this expansion of, hey, this is a currency that's going to work for this and this and this and this and this and features. And the way that you barricade it is by increasing cost, if that's what you have to do in those situations where, hey, when 10.1.7 drops, you can earn substantially more of this currency, but stuff also costs a lot more. So if you've been banking it for a long time, you're not able to like get this huge leap ahead of everybody else kind of idea. I think would be a nice way to do it because I just, the moment I see like, you'll be able to earn this new currency that lets you buy these other things, I'm like, that's great. I love that you're choosing to put in new things that I can buy. But could we use some of the other 10 or 12 currencies that we already have in the expansion to do this? Would that work?
Yeah. It's also kind of like in the past, we've had like maybe 2 of these style events like in an entire expansion. because you sort of like wouldn't have one for the first cycle, then like maybe you'd have one in like a .2 patch or something, and then in a .3. And then in this expansion, we're getting 3 patches in one cycle, and each one of them has one of these. And, it's sort of, in a way, and I think we were talking about this last week or the week before, in relation to time rifts, it's kind of like public event overload, and they have like these very limited windows where they're relevant to most players. 10 weeks, how fast are we getting patches? And it's like, once a new thing is out, well, who cares what the thing from before? It doesn't give the cool new cosmetics. It doesn't give the appropriate amount of power. I could just go do this. This is the thing I need to focus on. And sounds like Dream Surges are going to totally replace time rifts in 10.1.7, and we'll probably see 10.1.7 by like September. So I don't know. I mean, the game just never worked like this before, so it's kind of hard to wrap our brains around in some ways, I think. It would be cool if you had more of a through line of currency, like if everybody just took like the same. They've done stuff before where like they ramp the currency price when it carries over, and then like the cost. It was the Titan stuff or whatever in Legion, and it was like, well, it costs 4 times as much as it used to, or 16 times or whatever it was. So it's like however much you had before, that's cool, but it doesn't do anything for you. I don't know. Streamlining that kind of stuff, I think, could be better. Although, I don't know. I guess like keeping it totally tied to one public event might be better in a way, because it's like if you're just focusing on this patch, then all you care about is this event currency, and like you're not going back to the 10.0.5 event currency, so you don't care. I don't know.
So here's my other solution. Right, here's the other way they could fix currencies. They have a bank in the game already. Give me a currency exchange inside of the bank. Let me go into the bank, and for whatever bizarro changes, put every single currency in this expansion into that window and have exchange rates. Just let me do that, all right? And I don't care which way it goes. If I have to dump everything into resources and then I can spend resources to buy other currencies, like whatever it is, have that so you can actually go, all right, as you said, they've replaced time rifts. The time rift currency is no longer something I need to pay attention to. I bought everything I need with it. I still have leftover time rift currency sitting in my bag. I don't know what to do with it. I go to the exchange vendor, I change it all out for either resources, so then I have a whole bunch of resources I can use to buy other currencies, or I change it out for the new currency that I want to get, or an older currency that I never finished all the rewards from. Whatever it is, have that actually work as you have a bank. Like, just let me use the bank to change my currencies around.
Yeah, I mean, what you're describing to me, you know what it sounds like is, do you remember the
Sargeras vendor?
The Blood of Sargeras vendor in Legion? Yeah, it's kind of like that, except maybe more specifically for like, I mean, why not just do a Blood of Sargeras style currency?
Yeah. I don't know.
Like for everything, for an entire expansion.
I don't know.
And I mean, Blood of Sargeras was a little controversial when Legion was coming out, but like very early on, it was like, oh yeah, no, this is no problem. You just get it from everywhere, and then you have it for everything. I thought that worked really well, and I was kind of surprised that they kept reinventing that wheel over the years. Blood of Sargeras was kind of more originally and tightly focused on like profession stuff, right? Like you were trading in for profession mats or whatever, but they expanded it out a little bit over time to include other types of currencies. So I could definitely see something like that working, or just like, have a like kind of a currency exchanger NPC that like, you can get what you can exchange some of this for whatever other currency you want in the game, but you have like a lower premium if you want resources, for example, but you have like a higher premium for each patch that you want to carry it forward. Like, I think that could definitely work and streamline it a bit, or at least have people feel better about their previous investment in an activity, that they can carry forward some of it. Like, they've done stuff like this in the past, but never anything quite that comprehensive. But if the ongoing model is like every time we patch, we're adding a new public event that has a new currency associated with it, then maybe they should think about it. I mean, but I think there'd be a lot of benefit there.
I think there would. It would declutter bags. It would let people actually target down specific things they want. It gives them more ways to earn currency towards the things that they want, which also is kind of cool. Of, hey, you know what? If I'm doing this public event and all I really care about is mounts, I don't care about toys and pets and transmog and all that kind of stuff. I just want mounts. You could do all of the public events, get a whole bunch of currency, do all of the exchange around to be able to afford the mount for the currency you want for the thing that you're trying to do. Which makes those old events relevant, because you can actually go back and get that old currency and do something with it, right? Like, that to me is interesting. So like, I feel like an exchange makes sense. And whether that exchange is all of the currencies turn into resources and you can spend varied amounts of resources to buy the other currencies you want to buy. So you actually have this throughway of the actual main currency is resources, and you just dump everything into resources and then use resources to buy and trade for things. That's fine. I don't care which way they choose to do it, whether they want to have a vendor that then has, hey, you want to get this I'm just trying to picture UI, right? Like you have the same currency that's purchasable from 12 other different currencies. This is huge UI scale versus going, no, everything you trade to this vendor becomes resources, and this vendor has a page that's just all the currencies that you buy with resources, right? An easier, cleaner kind of scale that you can do that with, I think would work well. So yeah, I think if this is their model going forward, they should look at something like that, because I think that could really solve a lot of it. Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, look forward to whatever the new 10.1.7 currencies are.
Exactly.
There'll be something.
There'll be something. Yeah. My only other thing I want to mention about Dream Surges, because these public events are cool, but we've talked about public event bloat, is just that ongoing concern of I'm a new player to the game. I always try and think about someone who's just coming back to the game, just trying to get into it. Your map is the most overwhelming thing on the planet. There is so much happening on it. You have no idea what's current, what's not current, what's happening, what gives you what rewards and what item level scale, what's important, how you should focus on it. It's disorienting. So I do have concerns about them continuing to add public events, because unless you have a friend going, ignore all of these, focus on this. Yeah, it's quite scattershot to try and figure out. And I mean, exploring is part of the game. So going out and doing this and exploring an event and going, oh, I did this event thing, I got this cool reward, that's great. But it can also feel like, oh, I've been doing this wrong this entire time, is what you can end up feeling like when you finally discover that you should have been doing Dream Surges as opposed to doing Frack Assaults, right? Like that can be that kind of feeling that can happen to players where they've only got 6 hours to play a week or something, and they want to do the most with their time, and so they did Frack Assaults thinking this is going to help me gear up quickly. And they do that for 2 or 3 weeks, and they realize, no, these Dream Surge things are actually what I'm supposed to be doing. That's unfortunate. So there are clues to lead people in that direction. It's just a concern when you look at the map and it's so busy and you're flying around, flying into event after event after event when you're just sort of traveling through a zone.
Yeah, it's cool to have stuff to do, but there is a balance there. And I mean, like, they've done some smart things, like tone down the amount of like elemental invasions, whatever they were called, from the expansion launch, right? Like, I think they cut that to one zone, and it happens like on a way shorter timer. It sort of begs the question, why have it at all? Because it became irrelevant from the 10.0.5 content and stuff, or at least like very diminished from what value it had even back then.
Yeah.
But again, I guess there's value to keeping it in the expansion while the expansion is live, for sure. It's like part of the expansion, so I get like not entirely turning it off. But yeah, I don't know. It's at some point, it's like how much does this really matter? This thing that came out like a year ago or 9 months ago. Do you want to even suggest that players do this? And like, it's not like it tells its own story where it's like players who play for the story element are getting something out of it. You're just killing mobs to grind currency. So
yeah.
I mean, maybe tuning down frequency, maybe like not having, maybe not putting in like breadcrumb quests and stuff like that isn't relevant in the patch or something. I don't know. We've just never seen this kind of model in WoW before. Yeah. I don't feel like, with this many different types of events that come in this frequently and have nothing to do with each other.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's a good experiment, and I think maybe the happy medium is somewhere in between what they've done in the past and sort of what we're seeing in this expansion. And, maybe we dial it down to where, like, maybe there's an event that comes in with the big numbered patches, and then that expands over the course of the patch, or it becomes like more valuable. They like buff the rewards from it or something somehow to speed up the process. I don't know. But like, yeah, I mean, if you like, I don't know, you didn't have a chance to play Dragonflight until right now, and you just bought it because it was on sale, and you hit level 70 and you went to Valdrakken, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what is your
your head explodes first and foremost. Yeah.
Like, what are you being presented with? Like, what information are you getting?
Yeah.
And then, like, what choices are you making to go experience the game? And I agree. I think that could be a real problem. I guess the benefit of Dream Surges, it sounds like the way Dream Surges are presented is that
they're like a Legion invasion.
They're going to be really obvious, right? Yeah. That this is like a good thing to do. There's going to be a lot of stuff calling your attention to it, and they kind of persist for a while, and there's a lot of stuff to do around them. So that might be a bit more obvious for people to interact with once this patch hits.
Yeah.
This content update hits.
Indeed. All right. Other things coming in with this is Heritage Armors for Forsaken and Night Elf. And I know that Night Elf Heritage Armors in particular is something that players have been asking for since they saw the original World of Warcraft cinematic and went, hey, there's a Night Elf outfit in this that I've never been able to get in the game. Where is this outfit that I can get it? So I'm hoping perhaps this is that opportunity. We haven't seen art for the Night Elf stuff yet. The Forsaken stuff looks really rad. It's quite cool looking. They definitely did not go the way that I thought they would go with Heritage, where it's like, yes, you were a citizen of Lordaeron and rotted in the ground for a period of time. Your clothes, the burlap sack you were wearing for pants has now sort of worn down and degraded over time. Your shredded shirt that you used to have for when you were selling goods is now deteriorating and rotting. They went with like armor. There's like a casket backpack that you have, and there's spikes all over it, and it's leather, and there's purple and brown. It's really cool. It's a great looking thing. I don't know how heritage it is, because it doesn't really have a foundation in anything other than, hey, there's a Lordaeron symbol that hangs off it, which is pretty wicked, because I do love that tie back. But there's nothing else that really grounds it in undead for me. So we'll be curious to see.
I don't know. I mean, I don't get that vibe from it necessarily.
You like that?
I guess the thing is, like, it doesn't look like a particular NPC or like character type of. It doesn't look like an undercity guard or something. But like, it's got the color scheme, the purple and gold, that you kind of associate with Forsaken Undead. Yeah, it's got the Lordaeron symbols on the kind of loincloth type of thing, or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. It's got the Forsaken looking skull pauldrons. The hood and the face covering is like very Dark Ranger to me. Mm-hmm. This is like very. I get very like old school, like Sylvanas Forsaken vibes, like before Sylvanas went off in another direction. Like that original kind of Forsaken vibe is kind of what I get off of this. But I don't know. I mean, I have a Forsaken who haven't played in a couple expansions, but like I don't know if I want to cover up her whole face and everything. Like the hood and the mask is cool, but I don't know if that's what I want for that character. And that's like the chest piece kind of has really nothing going on.
Agreed. Yeah.
And like the gloves and stuff are just kind of these like, fingerless kind of wraps. I mean, but I think there's a lot you could do with it. I guess the cool thing about a Forsaken Undead, right, is especially with the transmog rules the way they are, you kind of just mix and match which pieces you want to be relevant for your character. Like you could kind of take it to that level. So there's some nice options here, but
I will say that the main one that we're looking at from the front is on a troll, which is interesting to me. It's an undead troll, because he has 3 fingers, and he has his pointy ears sticking through the hood. Whereas the one on the right that we're seeing image-wise is on an actual undead skeleton person, and it looks different.
Yeah, you can see the bones sticking. I wonder what that means exactly.
I don't know what it means, but yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah, and of course, the Night Elf one, it hasn't been officially shown yet. It's not done entirely, but it is data mineable on the PTR, and it looks cool. It very Tyrande-esque vibes, I think, and it does kind of call back to the original Vanilla WoW cinematic. It looks good. I think for me, it's like they did the Warfronts in BFA, right? And there was a Darkshore Warfront, and that was the Night Elves and the Forsaken, and they each got really nice armor that matched their culture kits for all 4 different armor classes, and there was like an upgraded version of each set that added all kinds of extra elements and geometry and stuff. And the plate Night Elf Warfront set for me, for my character, my warrior, is better than the heritage armor anyway. But I kind of figured that would be the case. Like when they debuted that, this is why we got Forsaken and Night Elf last. It's why we got Human and Orc so late.
Yeah.
It's because they got all of this attention in BFA and the Warfront system. The human stuff, the human themed stuff from Arathi Highlands was beautiful. The plate set, it's just incredible looking. It's just, you see like a Kultiran in it or something. It's just striking how cool that armor looks. And I feel the same way about the Darkshore stuff. So I don't know. I mean, like, I think the heritage armor system is great. I will definitely want to go collect these, and I'm sure the quest lines will be really great, and I'll be happy to have it. I mean, I could see like using this on other characters other than my warrior. I'll probably play with it on the Warrior for a while or something, just check it out. But it was like, oh, they finally announced Night Elf Heritage Armor, and then it's not in the post, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Of course. But yeah, I mean, more heritage is better. It's such a great feature for the game, and it reminds me that I didn't even do the human and orc stuff yet. I should probably do that at some point while I'm in a really serious WoW mode lately.
Yeah.
Because like even the reward aside, like the quest lines for these have been so good. The Blood Elf one is some of the best questing I've ever done in World of Warcraft, and I'm not even like a Blood Elf fan. I'm not like a Blood Elf guy. They're fine. I don't have anything against them. It's just not where I live. But like I'll remember that questing as long as I play this game. So
yeah.
But New Heritage is always exciting. They got a lot to live up to, I feel like, with the system. So so far everything I've done, they didn't let me down.
Yeah. Some things that are not mentioned in here. Well, actually, one more thing that is mentioned here is they're going to be breaking the Dawn of the Infinite dungeon up into 2 heroic difficulty dungeons for players who want to experience it, as more bite-sized content, which is also sort of their way of test running the Mythic Plus, which is eventually going to be happening down the line when it gets, into being 2 separate Mythic Plus dungeons. So that'll be happening. But a couple of things they don't mention inside this blog post, other than they have inside the large, here's our season layout all the way through to season 3, is a holiday refresh for Brewfest and Hollow's End, which I'm super pumped for. I'm really curious what those are going to look like as far as holiday refreshes go. There's going to be new story content coming out with this for Reforging Tyr and some other stuff that they'll be exploring into. So I've been following along with the Tyr storyline a lot. It's continuing that in pretty big ways. So definitely things that are worth checking out. They do mention the Heritage Armors, but they also mention new customizations for Night Elves and Forsaken and more. So we could be seeing some new customization options as well come in for Night Elves and Forsaken, which is going to be cool. So yeah, I'm excited for this to be hitting PTR and us to start getting more and more information about it as we, get farther into the fall, because that's when all this is going to be landing a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I've seen some data mining come out for a bunch of this stuff. I'm trying not to get too deep into it because I want to kind of save it for when it comes out. But it looks really cool, and the holiday refresh stuff seems awesome. Like exactly kind of what we needed. We're always talking about that, because we didn't get much of a refresh at all for Shadowlands.
No,
almost nothing. And before that, a lot of what they're doing is there's a themed Hearthstone toy available for that. It's like, okay, I'll get it, I guess, just so I don't have to think about it. But I don't really want this. It seems like they're adding some really cool stuff for this refresh for Dragonflight, and just all kinds of new cosmetics and stuff coming in. Which I guess it's the benefit to doing these more frequent patches and smaller patches is you could throw in how about some new tattoos for Night Elves or something?
Yeah.
It's like you have the chance to ship it into the game. So it's all. I think it really it's made it even when I'm sort of a little bit out on Dragonflight, I'm just kind of raid logging. It's still there's still things that are compelling about maybe I should check this out. I don't really have time this weekend or whatever, but it's there if you want to do it.
It's definitely going to be the expansion where at the end of it, when we're in that last 3 months and they're announcing, hey, things are coming to a close, we're going to have the new pre-patch kicking off soon. People are going to have a laundry list of things that they still want to go back and do and get done before the expansion goes away. I definitely feel like the amount they're adding in each, each content update is certainly something that is that is going to create a list of, ooh, I still need to buy that. Ooh, I still need to farm this. Ooh, I still need to go and grab that before the next expansion launches. So it'll be interesting to see, as this continues to roll out, whether people can start crossing those things off their lists, or if it, as you said, sort of builds up over time, and then you're like, I got to go back to Dragonflight and get these things I want to get. I definitely think that'll kick in once there's dragon riding in the rest of Azeroth. I think once those things start to go live, you'll see a lot of people going back to Dragonflight to pick up stuff they didn't get yet, because they really want some things that are cosmetics that make the dragon feel more like their own. All right.
Oh man, you just made me think of something that I meant to mention earlier, much earlier in the show, and I didn't. And I just have to go totally down a side street here for 1 second, because part of going back to WPL, EPL, etc., to do all the secret knack stuff, I got to see and experience and play around in the updated lighting and fog in Eastern Kingdoms.
Yeah.
And it looks incredible. The zones look so cool when you fly around them. It doesn't, obviously it's not the fidelity of Dragonflight zones, but it's that same vibe, the same kind of vistas. You can see stuff way in the distance, and it's actually rendered, and you can see different, volumes of fog, like lower and higher to the ground, and the lighting looks really great. These are, these zones were being built in the early 2000s, and changing this stuff dresses them up and makes them look not like a brand new game, but makes them look so much more modern. And it made me think like they should do a classic Season of Mastery where they like update as much of the graphical stuff as they can without rebuilding the whole game. So like put in like if they could put in the new lighting and fog in these zones, right? And like put in the new character models and like remodel in higher poly and higher res as much of the old like classic gear as you can, and like incorporate that stuff into Season of Mastery. So it's not like the museum piece, realms. Yeah. It's not the preserving WoW classic vanilla WoW idea. It's its own like remix thing and has like more of these modern elements. Put like edit mode in there, put like a more modern UI, and just like have this little offshoot of the game that's like a remixed version of vanilla WoW. I think that would be like really fun. And it would, considering what you could do with some of these changes with the draw distance and the lighting and everything, it would dress the game up so much. I think it would be a cool twist on it. I mean, obviously with a season, you probably want other different kinds of tweaks to the gameplay, and rule changes and stuff. You don't want just that, but like, if you have that as a seasonal thing, like that would be so cool. And I think we've seen the sentiment around stuff change so much, and you see with like Wrath Classic how many changes they've made. That's not really the game we were playing in 2009. No. It's like they've changed it a lot. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying like that's the way that whole project has developed, right? Like that's the way we've gone. I since day one, I was saying there was value in having vanilla WoW servers as a museum piece, and I think they should be left alone. But if they had the opportunity to spin off something really out there with the concept of vanilla WoW and incorporate more modern tech and visuals and stuff, I would how could you not check it out? I would love it. And that was like the first thing that I thought of when I saw like, oh yeah, wow, these zones really do look different with this tech.
Oh, good. I'm glad you went back, experienced it. Yeah, it's definitely cool looking. I'm thrilled with that. And Season of Mastery is their way of having a sandbox for Classic that they can play around with and see what players are into, and that's a good idea for it. All right, we also saw an auction house update to the companion app. We mentioned this last week. The WoW Companion app has been updated to include the ability to sell your wares on the go, stock up on items you need, and sell off items you don't on the go. So here's what you can do. You can browse and view the auction house. You can buy auctions. You can search auctions. You can add and remove items from your favorites list for the auction house. You can post items from your inventory for sale, and you can view and cancel your listed auctions. This is very similar to what you used to be able to do ages ago with the app. It's now back. So I hope players are diving in and enjoying the auction house app. I used to be at work and like on one of my breaks, I would like pull it up and buy a bunch of stuff and sell a bunch of stuff. And then, it was a great way to do it. Get ready for
raid, get your consumables or whatever. You're ready to go. You know what? We heard that this was coming back, but it was a surprise to me when they announced that it was going to come back, and now it's here. Like, I just figured it went away for some very obvious reasons, right? The security hole that it represents, having like all of these mobile phones in existence, being able to like hook into the auction house, and then the performance hit on Blizzard's back end for running the auction house. But I guess they feel confident about, how they can position the product at this point. So it's cool. I mean, it was a thing that a lot of people did like. I mean, I don't think it had like wide adoption, but the people who used it like in a very specific way and liked it. So it's probably not something I'm going to use in my current like state of life, if I, especially with like, you do get instant delivery usually from your auction house purchases and stuff. You don't need like a buffer. I got to wait for my auction house purchases to show up. So, I don't really, and I don't play the auction house, so to speak. Like I use it to buy and sell stuff. But I'm not like speculating on stuff on the auction house or anything. So I feel like those are the kind of players that will benefit from this the most, since they can have access to it even if they're not playing the game. But yeah, I mean, adding more features to the game is cool, and it sucks when features have to die. And it did suck when the mobile auction house had to go away. And I understand why it did. I just hope that the new iteration of it doesn't end up, having the same kind of pitfalls.
Yeah, agreed. All right, the Great Push is starting up this weekend. You can go over to your twitch.tv/Warcraft or youtube.com/Warcraft and watch the streams. They're obviously going to be in English, French, and German and Spanish for you to be able to watch if you're looking for them. This is going to be Group A, competing from July 21st to the 23rd. Next weekend, it'll be July 28th to 30th will be Group B, and then August 4th to 6th is Group C, with the global finals happening on August 18th to 20th. These broadcasts are kicking off at 10 a.m. Pacific, that's 1 p.m. Eastern Time, with a $30,000 prize pool per group, and the global finals having a $300,000 prize pool for it. The format is the teams push the highest key possible on Mythic Plus Keystones against the clock with daily eliminations. So essentially, your group, your team, well, first of all, your group is made up of teams, and then the teams within that group will compete to basically see who comes out on top on who can push a keystone the highest they possibly can. I think the highest out there right now is a plus 30 Underrot, I think is the highest that we've seen globally with a group out of China. There's some 29s in there with like Naltharis that's done it, but there's also mainly Underrot. So I think Underrot might technically be like the easiest key, if you will, quote unquote, to push really high. We'll see what they end up doing with this. They've got together a group of casters who are going to be casting the whole event. I enjoy watching the Great Push because you get to see teams experiment and iterate and develop and try new things. And with Augmentation Druid, with Augmentation Evoker just coming out, I think you'll see some people potentially playing around with some really kooky stuff. So I'm excited to see Group A. I definitely think Group C has an advantage since they go later, which means they have more time to play around with Augmentation Evoker. So we might not see a lot of them pop up until then, but the advantage is you're competing against everyone else who has the same amount of time to sort of get ready for this going into the global finals, because obviously the global finals will just be the top teams from those groups. So yeah, I'll be curious to see how this all works out. It's fun to watch.
This is my preferred MDI format.
Mm-hmm.
Or do I even still call it MDI? I don't know.
Great Push.
They actually don't say MDI anywhere, so I guess it's Great Push is its own thing now.
Yeah.
But this is your MDI for season 2, right? They're not doing the foot race style MDI this season of Dragonflight. So
yeah.
I love the format because for the reasons you mentioned, like I feel like it lets teams bring like pocket picks, because it's not about like, okay, we need to do this 18 or whatever it is in this very specific circumstance. And that means like we need to use these meta choices because we know everybody else is going to be doing this exact thing. Like there's a time limit, but the whole point is to get the highest key completed in time that you can. So as long as you can time it, it doesn't matter if you're a second underneath the timer or 10 minutes underneath the timer. And you can spend more time in an individual dungeon or whatever if you want to. The way the scoring works, it's like, okay, you have the pool, and then they just add together the ranks that you've timed, and then whoever has the highest score wins, right? So
I just want to jump in. That's what I love the most about this is it's not about doing one run. You get one chance, one opportunity to be able to actually do the run as perfectly as you can. If you screw it up, you're done, right? In this case, it's no, you could fail over and over and over and over again and iterate until you succeed. And that's way more entertaining to watch than, oh, well, they had an early death. I guess they're out compared to this other team who's going to win. And you're like, oh, well, okay. I mean,
right. Yeah. Like they're trying to set up some pool where they can grab, 8 packs at once. And if it works out, then they can time this key and whatever. But, they had an unlucky proc or something happened. They missed an interrupt and then they died. Well, they could reset it and try it again. And then if they could make that pool work, then maybe a key that would be otherwise untimable is timeable or something. Like that's a great element of the competition. I think really, to me, it exemplifies more the spirit of what Keystone Dungeons are than the typical MDI format, honestly, because it's about like trying that next rank and trying to do better, facing a harder difficulty dungeon and getting over that, that hump, getting over that next milestone. Whereas, I don't know, I've been critical of the foot race style MDI since like PFA, man. I mean, geez, we used to rant about that on a weekly basis when it was MDI time about how bad the format was and everything. You just see like 2 teams playing the exact same comps, doing dungeons side by side, but they don't affect each other in any way. Yeah, their timers don't impact each other in any way. Like, why do we have this foot race bracket when they're not actually playing against each other? Yeah, there's a lot of problems with that. Great Push has none of these problems. I'm not saying it has no problems, but I do think it's like way more fun to watch because there's more stuff going on. Yeah. teams are in different dungeons trying different things. The comps you see are like way more varied usually than in the foot race format. So I'm excited. I want to try to check some of this out if I can. I think the cool thing is it's easier to casually watch too, because you can kind of just focus on like one team or one run or whatever, or just like the whole overall competition. Whereas the foot race, you're kind of encouraged to compare like where the two teams are at, and you're always watching the timers and all that. It's like I think there's a decent argument to make that like the timers are the worst thing about the Keystone Dungeon system to begin with. So when the whole competition is focused around timers, I don't know. Obviously it factors into Great Push because you have to time the dungeon, but
yeah,
you don't have to time the dungeon by, being 17 minutes under the timer or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to check it out and see kind of how these teams approach this dungeon pool. I think there's some kind of interesting elements in the pool this season. So it'll be cool to see how they approach it and how high the keys can get up in the competition setting, right? I don't think anybody, I don't know, maybe people will get up into that plus 30 range. I don't know, but that might not be the safe play if you can get, mid 20s or whatever across the board. Plus there's also the element of strategy around, okay, you have this much time during the day to run your dungeons, but as long as you start the dungeon before the window expires, you can finish that last dungeon you start. So how do you portion your time out as a team to get as many runs in as you can up to the 59th minute of the last hour and then start that key that's going to take you the longest? There's some cool planning involved too that just makes the whole competition interesting to me compared to the traditional format. So it's really cool. I if you never watched WoW Esports before, or you're like, I don't get it, or you tried to watch it, you didn't like it, I think like this is probably the thing to check out.
Yeah, I think you'll get the most description of the process that teams use to try and do these keys out of this. A lot of the time when they're doing the foot race style and people are commentating on it, they are trying to keep up with what's happening with the team. So then there's this like strategic review that happens once the dungeon's done, where they talk about a particular pull or what's happening in a particular pull and what that team's trying to do or tried to do inside that run and what failed. And it's often hard to relate to that when you're not watching it in front of you. But when you're watching a team do it and they're commentating on it and the team fails at it and has to reset, it gives the opportunity for them to go, okay, this is what happened and this is why they failed and this is what they're trying to accomplish. Let's watch them do it again. And then you go, oh, okay, I now have context as to what's happening. I get to watch them do it again, as opposed to like trying to rewind the video and go back to where they were first mentioning, right? It's more interesting to watch that process happen for a team as they figure things out. And so I'm excited for it. I think it'll be a good event for people to check out. All right. With that, I want to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us create the content that we put out every single week that we enjoy. Today is a special shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Butter, Celian, Kapawi, Max, Shorel, and Vespin. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our patrons. You are all wonderful in what you give to support the show. Obviously, we have expenses every month with hosting the show, all the upload stuff, assets, all sorts of stuff that goes into running the show regularly. So we appreciate that you will help us all pay the bills and keep the show running as smoothly as it does. Even technology in some cases where something will fail or needs to get replaced, you guys help out with that. So we appreciate all that you give and help keep this show going every week. And, I don't know if next week's going to be Tuesday, but we're going to do the best and we'll get a show out next week. We always seem to get one out every week. So there you are.
Yes, we'll make it happen no matter what. And that is in large part thanks to our patrons for keeping the show running. So thank you all for your support. It means so much to us and it helps us keep the show on track and help us deliver what you expect out of the show. And for when we do need to replace some equipment or we need to, pay a bill for a hosting vendor or something. I mean, that's it literally helps you get to listen to the show. So thank you so much.
Yes. If you're trying to find our Patreon, you can find it over at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And the other thing that helps the show out a lot is when people leave us reviews. Those 5-star reviews over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcast, are always great. They help boost up the charts, help more people find the show itself and participate in the show. And we love reading them here. And this one comes in from Alex, entitled An Absolute Gem. It says, Spencer and Jason consistently deliver the most thorough, professional, and inviting podcast you can find in the WoW community. As an average WoW player who has dipped in and out of the game since vanilla, it's been difficult to find a podcast that doesn't treat the listener as a lifelong hardcore player. TSZ spends most of its time exploring current content, but regularly includes information on great niche content from past expansions that a returning player may have missed out on. Lastly, if you've been frustrated by the juvenile tone of other podcasts, Jason and Spencer are always adult, respectful, and know how to treat the more serious news topics appropriately. This is my favorite podcast every week, and I am so appreciative of the time and energy both hosts obviously put into it. Thank you. Well, thank you, Alex. And yeah, I am glad you highlighted us going over niche stuff from old expansions, because something we haven't done in a while.
How appropriate for a week where I've been in Western Plague Lands.
Exactly, right? The definitely Western Plague Lands. The thing I haven't mentioned in a long time that I want to start mentioning again is the Ghost Moose. That is way back in the day for people to go back and get.
Gonna go park out in Legion Dal.
Yeah, man, that's something that we want to start mentioning when that rolls around for people who do archaeology. Because we used to mention that all the time, and it just fell off at some point. But I need to go back and actually look at the schedule and get that added back into the notes regularly, because it's a fun one for people to get. It's a fun mount for people to ride around on. So yeah, we love highlighting that stuff. So I'm glad you're enjoying the show. Thank you so much for the review. It does help us out a lot. And man, looking forward to more episodes for you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time to write in. Great to hear from you, and I'm glad you're enjoying the show. And yeah, I read that this morning when I was putting the notes together for the show and thinking about like this very strange rabbit hole I've been going down with the Naxxramas thing. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty niche, and it does involve a lot of old content. I mean, it's new content, but it's also the new content uses old content in a new way. So that's really cool. Yeah. So I'm glad we could include that. I didn't even really, I understood that it was in there in some way in the new patch, but I didn't understand what we're going to be doing with it. So, yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, so thanks, Alex, for taking the time to write in.
Yeah. That's going to wrap up episode 587 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter, or you can join our Discord over at thestartingzone.com/discord. If you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that on TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/The Starting Zone, where you can get designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and that kind of stuff. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald, and you can also find me streaming WoW on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and sometimes youtube.com/Shieldwald. So check out the video channels. Drops have come and gone for the picnic basket, so we have no active drop campaign, but I will still be streaming. We'll be doing Avarice stuff and Keystones and whatever other patch stuff I'm doing. So come check that out. Hopefully my upstream works so I can actually push it out to Twitch. And I guess this week will be the first week like raiding under the ZTH banner and as part of that whole community and playing on a full pop server. So come check that out.
Yeah. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at Spencer_Downey, or over on twitch.tv at twitch.tv/SpencerHD. Also up on YouTube at youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.